Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Zafri bin Muhammad Isham. Today I will presenting you about my final year project. The title of my final year project is The Relationship Between Birth Order and Personality Traits Among Malaysian Students. All of this topic I will cover after this. Background of study. Sherman and Mosaic describe two definitions of birth order. First of all is ordinal position that refer to the actual order of birth of the siblings. And the second one is psychological position that refer to the role of the child adopts in his or her interactions with others. They also have a research that found that there was a stronger relationship between psychological birth order and lifestyle than between actual birth order and lifestyle. Sulawesi stated that consistent with evolutionary trends in many species, children in human families to compete for parental resources by creating distinctive niches. Problem statement that I have found first of all is there are a lot of bibliographies on birth order research. Stewart and Stewart alone found 1,065 items published about birth order from 1976 to 1993. Most findings have found that there was a weak and inconsistent results. Besides, parents frequently unconsciously or consciously are swayed by birth order personality attribute stereotype. Furthermore, they also have an investigation towards the association between birth order and adolescent behavior, such as smoking, drinking, marijuana use, sexual activity, and crime. They have found that last-born person are more likely to use substance and be sexually active than their first-born counterpart. They also found that second-born boys are substantially more likely to exhibit delinquency problems compared to their older siblings. There are two objectives in this final year project. The main objective is to study the relationship of birth order and personality traits among Malaysian students. Specific objectives consist of two. Firstly, to identify the relationship between firstborns and the personality traits. Secondly, to identify the relationship between laterborns and the personality traits. Independent variable is birth order that consists of firstborn and laterborn, while dependent variable is personality traits consist of neuroticism, extraversion, openness to experience, variableness, consciousness. There are five research hypotheses. First of all, null hypothesis. There is no significant differences between birth order and extraversion. Firstborn will score higher on extraversion than laterborn. Second hypothesis, null hypothesis. There is no significant differences between birth order and agreeableness. Firstborns will score lower on agreeableness than laterborn. And the third one is null hypothesis. There is no significant between birth order and conscientiousness. Firstborns will score higher on conscientiousness than laterborns. Fourth hypothesis, null hypothesis. There is no significant differences between birth order and neuroticism. Firstborn will score higher neuroticism than laterborn. The lastly hypothesis, null hypothesis, there is no significant differences between birth order and openness to experience. Firstborns will score lower on openness to experience than laterborn. There are a lot of significance of this study. First of all, it will lead to choose people as spouse. Second one, it helps the counselor to figure out what kind of personality based on their birth order. And the third one, it will give clues about the kind of job for a person may be good at. Definition of key terms, I divided it into two, which is the first one is birth order. I focus on operational definition. There are two definitions of birth order. First of all is ordinal position that refer to the actual order of birth of the siblings, and the second one is psychological position that refer to the role of the child adopts in his or her interaction with others. In this research, I focus on the ordinal. In this research, I focus on the ordinal position that refer to the actual order of the birth of the sibling. Personality traits that I focus about in the definition is the individual differences in people's pattern of thinking, feeling, and behaving can be summarized in terms of the big five personality domains that I have stated before. Chapter 2. Chapter 2 consists of several literature review about the birth order and the personality traits. For the birth order effect in a wide variety of personality characteristics have been the topic of the extensive study. The birth order and the parent investment, the birth order and the relationship, the birth order and siblings, the birth order and leadership, and the birth order and the self-esteem. Personality traits, personality, they have a lot of definition of personality, but what I have been found that McCrae and Costa define personality as enduring emotional, interpersonal, experiential, attitudinal, motivational style that explain behavior in different situations. Five-factor model. The five-factor model is a personality model that has been widely studied and studied in several language groups around the world. Alfred Adler is the most Alfred Adler believed that birth order had a direct association with personality characteristic, birth order and personality traits. In this literature review, they have found that firstborn score significantly higher on conscientiousness compared to their second-born sibling and lower on openness to experience. Based on the literature review, I have concluded that all of them have made a statement that the firstborn were more conscientiousness then the later born, and the later born have is more openness than the firstborn. All of this literature review, I have summarized it into the hypothesis. Chapter 3. Chapter 3 methodology. Research design that I have been used is quantitative research. Big 5 inventory is the research instruments. I have used online survey to collect data. Part A, demographic information that I have been used descriptive statistical analysis. And for the part B, I have used ANOVA test for the statistical inference analysis, and I have used ISPSS version 11.5 as the data analysis method. Sampling method that I have used is stratified simple random sampling. The population that I have targeted I have used is counseling students of UNIMAS. And how I determine the sample, I use Crunchy and Morgan. Chapter 4, Reliability Test. Alright, based on the table, the value of Cronbach alpha for all variables must be above 0.6. Ideally, the Cronbach alpha should be above 0.7. But as this study was evaluating consumer behavior, according to Nunnally, the Cronbach alpha coefficient of a scale can be accepted if above 0.6. Therefore, the Cronbach alpha in this study is set at 0.6. Overall, all the variables have a Cronbach alpha coefficient more than 0.6. I can conclude that all the items in this study are consistent and reliable. Alright, we go to the descriptive analysis, which I will analyze the gender, age, year of study, and number of siblings using the frequency and percentage method. For the gender, obviously female have a largest frequency person that answer my question than the male. As I stated in my writing that 1/4 is a ratio for the male to the female of the counseling student. For the age, the highest frequency that answer my question is 22 years old that almost achieve 50%, while the lowest frequency is 31 and 27 years old. Each of them consists of 0.9% only. That answer my question. While for the year of the study, the majority of students that answer my question is year 3, consists of 43 students, followed by year 2, 34 students, and the lastly is 33 students. For the year 4, I do not have any contact to answer my question. I will explain it into my limitation. Alright, for the number of siblings, the siblings that consist of 3% is the highest frequency, which is 25.5%, while the lowest frequency of the number of siblings that have 9, 10, and 11%, respectively 0.9%. And lastly, for the descriptive analysis, the birth order. Firstborn that I have found is 38.2%, while the laterborn is 61.8%. Alright, we go to the inferential analysis. The inferential analysis is to study the significant differences between categorical independent variable and a normally distributed interval dependent variables, which is one-way ANOVA. Hypothesis 1. Based on this table, there was no statistically significant differences between birth order and extraversion. Therefore, the null hypothesis can be accepted. Besides, the firstborn were found that have a higher level of extraversion than lastborns. In hypothesis 2, based on the table 2, there was no statistically significant differences between birth order and agreeableness. The mean score for the firstborn was significantly different to the laterborn. Therefore, firstborn were found a higher level of agreeableness than laterborn. Alright, we go to the hypothesis 3. Based on the table, there was no statistically significant differences between birth order and conscientiousness. Therefore, the null hypothesis can be accepted. Mean score for the first score was significantly different to lastborn. Therefore, lastborns were found to have higher level of conscientiousness than firstborn. The hypothesis 4, based on the table, we can conclude that there was no statistically significant between the birth order and the neuroticism. Besides, we also can conclude that the laterborn were found to have higher level of the neuroticism than the laterborn. And lastly, the last hypothesis is about the openness to experience. Based on the table, I have found that there was no statistically significant differences between birth order and openness to experience. Therefore, the null hypothesis can be accepted. Mean score for the firstborn was significantly different to the lastborn. Therefore, firstborn were found to have higher levels of openness to experience than laterborn. Alright, we go to the discussion. Based on this result, I have used a one-way ANOVA was carried out on the birth order categories. Firstborn, laterborn on the personality subscale, neuroticism, extraversion, agreeableness, openness to experience, and conscientiousness, which is the element of Big 5 inventory. The results show that there are no statistically significant differences between birth order categories and all of that variables. These findings are inconsistent with those of Alfred Adler, assumed that birth order was directly related to the traits of the personality. Besides, it also showed that another researcher such as Scholar, Ernst, and X that birth order differences is inconsistent and weak. Ernst and Alex conclude that birth order does not seem to have a very great influence on the infinite development of personality. Hoffman's study of the family environment as a source of sibling personality differences can better explain the relationship between birth order and personality traits a little bit. One of the factors affecting personality was a multiplicity of the interacting environmental influence, including parental involvement, peer relationship, and family sibling size, and any particular influence was unlikely to describe much variation. Theories such as Jefferson, Herbst, and Mackay, they all assume that they all discovered that firstborn were associated with neuroticism, extraversion, and conscientiousness. Besides, there are many researchers that made a significant finding which illustrate the firstborn score higher on extraversion and conscientiousness and lower on openness to experience and agreeableness compared with the later born. This finding conclude firstborn is higher on extraversion than letterborn, which have the same result with the research before. While letterborn is high on level of conscientiousness and neuroticism than firstborn, which are not support the previous researches. Haley and Ellis indicating letterborn score significantly higher on openness to experience compared to their firstborn sibling. Openness to experience expresses the degree of intellectual curiosity, creativity, and preference for novelty and variety a person possesses. It also illustrates the degree to which an individual is imaginative or independent while portraying personal preference for a range of activity and contrast to strict routine. In this research, have found the result that firstborn have a higher on level of openness to experience than letterborn in this research, which also contradict with the previous study. All right, we go to the chapter 5. The summary conclusion of the study, limitation of study, environment condition, and the implementation. The summary of the study, this study examined the relationship between both order and personality traits in Malaysia. Accordingly, I'm as the researcher has compiled and elaborated on the research of previous studies in Chapter 2 to provide a clearer picture and expectation of findings for this study. In addition, the researcher also associate with relevant theories and models to reinforce the result of previous studies described. Next, the researcher discussed the method of data collection and analysis. The most important aspect discussed include study design, population, and sampling. Besides, the study instrument used is also stated in detail in Chapter 3. In Chapter 4, the finding can be analyzed using SPSS version 11.5 and described in more detail to answer the objective of the study. The data analysis method was ANOVA test. In addition, there is some support from previous studies as reinforcing findings obtained by researchers. The conclusion of the study is, overall, this study found that there was no significant relationship between birth order and personality traits in Malaysia. This shows that birth order does not contribute personality traits among Malaysian students. There are 4 limitations of the studies. First of all is the internet access. There are some samples that live in remote area which do not have internet access to answer my question. The second one is cooperation problem. The survey may be ignored and deleted by some individual person that I have messaged. And the third one is survey fraud. This is the largest disadvantage of using online survey. The sample may be answered for the sake of please or obey the instruction. And the last one for the limitation of the study is insufficient number of sample. There are limited contact with year 4 counseling student. Recommendation for the future, first of all, is the future researcher may have to gathering through information about family influences could increase our understanding of any differences that may exist. The second one, the researcher should study more on birth order and measure of parental investment that because the parental investment may be influence the personality of the individual. And the third one is the future researcher may have to focus more in extensively control for the potential confounding variables associated with differences between families. And the fourth one, the future researcher have to focus on the relationship of the perfectionist and other mental health related personality in order to help the counselor or the other therapists. There are some implications of this study. First of all, it will provide insight to better understand the client and begin to build a relationship. It will help the clinician to more quickly and accurately identify client perspective and to understand his or her psychological perceptions concerning their place in the sibling group and the family. Besides, it will be the counselor of the therapy or the therapist also can identify clients' mistaken belief, and private logic will be easier to identify and discuss. It also be easier for the counselor to understand their feeling and perception. Besides, understanding original belief about romantic relationship also can be achieved from this study. That's all from me. If you have any question, you can